Please help me understand the use of the woods and the logs. From this perspective, it looks like some of them could be structural and also some of them could be veneer. So can you
would you mind doing it in front of the mic so we can I realize it is pretty intimate, but that's all right.
Okay, that's a great question. There's really not much that we're using structurally here. The structure would be a steel structure, and because we're trying to get those wide open span spaces, and we're not using veneers either, so it's neither. We would use the actual wood pieces and then detail them in a way to evoke, something powerful for the visitor, but it's not structural nor a veneer.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that we are not proposing a log cabin in the center of Park City here. What we're doing with the wood material is to evoke that mythology. So we're using the material, but we're not using it in a literal way to replicate the log cabin. It's that evocative association that we're really after. And as Anne mentioned, we're taking the material and transforming it with those associations into something else, because that's so much what art is about. It's about transforming the materials, and that's really what we were doing. Does that answer the question?
Tina?
Can you talk a little bit about the historic building, how you've treated it, how you've changed it, and how you've incorporated it?
Sure. One of the things, this is an image of the building that was the pre-1976, and this is sort of our inspiration. We'd like to kind of conceptually go back to this, and we're retaining, of course, those three walls. With our proposal, we could retain, if we need to, the barrel vaults.
Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. The barrel vaults, and then place the deck above it. But there are structural issues that we would, of course, need to address, certainly for the occupancy of the rooftop deck. But in terms of the overall volume, we'd also like to replace the windows. We need to upgrade it completely, but it would be retaining those three walls and retaining the character of it, and then kind of going back.
Just to carry on with what Anne was saying, is that we tried to pick up some of the headlines of the window and bring that line from the existing building into ours. We also, you can see that in our renderings, the glazing on Heber goes all the way to the ground now, because we noticed that right now the windowsill is up only because of the intervention after that 1979. There were mechanical issues where they had to get heating around the perimeter, and we're doing this full renovation. We thought we would take that out, bring it back to its original state, and use the mechanical in the motherboard.
So what is the exterior? Tell us how you've dealt with the exterior of the historic building.
It would be brick. Yeah.
Remaining how it is.
We would probably sandblast it and finish it, clean it up, change the signage, things like that.
And see if we could get those seismic plates off the front of it so that it could really be.
Which are off, not in that image also.
Installed with that.
Prescott?
I want to compliment you. I think it's a very elegant and measured response in a very kind of tough context. So I think it's very discreet. I think it would be an appropriate addition to Main Street. And I like the elevated south-facing steps and that kind of, again, measured porch. Instead of conceding too much of the floor area, you're creating a nice, comfortable space on its south orientation. So I think that all works. And I like also the obviously the kind of flexibility of the structure, which is tough with a museum trying to maintain security, and a nice flow between the two exhibit spaces. I think it's really functional. You can envision how effective that would be, and then wrapping the circulation around perimeter of those exhibit spaces tends to enliven the building, which is really an extension of Main Street. I think one of the challenges the center faces is which direction does it go? Is it really this collecting institution with a very secure envelope, climately controlled, relevant humidity, or does it continue the kind of tradition of this place of being open to the street, embracing people, more of a community center? What's your kind of take on that? I mean, this is a projection for the institution into the future.
Right. Well, those issues in terms of acoustics and environmental controls are really critical, and we didn't want to make those decisions without having conversations with the client and really sitting down and talking about that. But I do want to point out that our floor plans are pretty interesting, and I hope you can recognize the power in their simplicity. We really were thinking about what is this? We know what the Kimball is today. We know what it wants to be in the near future. But what is it 2 generations down the line? And the floor plans allow it to become different things. And that's how that guided our decision making.
I think it is a good question, because I think the problem was defined in such a way that it could have been easy to fall into the trap of thinking of this as the Kimball Art Museum, and it really wasn't that. That was an element of the program, but it wasn't just the Kimball Art Museum. It's really the art center, and to see it as community center and art museum, and trying to blend those two. I mean, that was the heart of our organizational challenge for the project, and so it's that. I think that is the answer. We're trying to walk the line of trying really to have both.
Again, my compliments to you. It's interesting to hear the presenters talk about their particular bias. It's interesting to hear the presenters talk about their particular bias and you feeling that this is about the American West and your work is about this place. And I think that comes through beautifully in your use of the tree and the material of it, and even the etching of the glass. It's about this place. And so I do think that there are questions about how the logs or the sections of the tree would work in terms of do they acoustically isolate? I think you said that they're not structural,
Right.
but there must be some thermal and acoustical barrier that you're envisioning.
Yes, and that again would come about through conversations about the needs and requirements. But we know that acoustics are going to be one of the things that we would start working on right away. The acoustical separation of spaces. And then the thermal, we've talked with our mechanical engineers, and they feel comfortable, and we sort of have some good thermal strategies already in place. We do have an acoustical engineer that we've worked with before that we're bringing onto the project that we would look forward to really collaborating on those issues. But again, they would be to meet the goals of the Kimball.
The reason why I think we are focused on it is because they are singularly the thing that makes this of its place. Mm-hmm. So in a strange way, they are kind of non-negotiable. If the Kimball sees this as a part of their identity, then this hits the bullseye. Mm-hmm. But if, for example, they didn't want to etch the glass with this aspen tree, what becomes of your concept of it being of this place, and the screen being also about this place? Because really, it seems that those two elements are really critical to your vision of it. And I'd like to know, as the project might evolve, what you hold on to for absolute real life, right, and what could potentially change.
I think what we hold on to for dear life is the translation of this research into architecture. Now the solution and the translation, we are always open to whatever hits the mark best. As long as it's addressing things like letting natural light in through that outer layer, I think we intend and we expect to work a lot on that graphic screen. That would be, one of the first exciting things that we would be doing. And, it will change. It will change. Maybe it would become more abstract. But I think it's important that it has natural light coming in, and that's probably not negotiable.
Last part of my question has to do with the educational components. It appears that you've tucked them underneath in what is technically the basement, and wanted to know how you thought that was going to work relative to this kind of dual identity that Kimball has, both of being an art center that exhibits and a place that's effectively also a community center.
Right, okay. I guess we're thinking that they form the core, really, of the project and the base, as you said here, but that they really connect the community, too. These are community art studios where people come and produce their art and are creative. So the very strong connection between those education components and the street, we felt were very important. But we also have to remember, these are messy spaces. There's a lot of activity. We have some guy welding. Piles of material. They're messy. They're active. They're design studios. So we think that that should be dealt with also in a strong way, in a poetic way, not maybe something that's right in your face.
And I think it's a little misleading, and it's my fault, because we're talking about the education facilities being on the lowest level, but because of the change in grade from Heber going down Main Street, we do have this situation where even though those two, the smithing studio and the ceramic studio, are on the lowest level, because of the change in grade, they actually are very exposed to Main Street. And yeah, you're exactly right. The model shows it very well.
And one other thing I wanted just to mention, that we have education classrooms distributed through the building, and they're basically multifunctional spaces that can be used throughout the building, including the outdoor upper deck, which we envisioned as an outdoor classroom. That screening room projection that cantilever is on the east side. We envision that as a classroom setting. So, and some of the linear galleries that you'll see, we have 3 of those, could also be nice kind of pin-up space, display space for people taking classes.
Thank you.
Yeah. You propose in this building to take out the existing floor, replace it with lightweight concrete deck, remove the roof, and lower the lower level by 18 inches.
Only in the, and this is another reason that we put the education spaces over here.
In that area.
Beyond the footprint, this is the edge of the perimeter of this building above. And you can see that we inserted this ramp here. And we put, aside from putting these education functions immediately adjacent to Main Street where we could take advantage of that change in elevation, but now what we heard on November 2nd is that there was a bit of a headroom issue in the existing spaces. So if we locate those education spaces here outside the footprint of this building, now we can lower the floor by 18 inches. And that, but not in this part, not in the lower level.
Well, in the rest of the lightweight concrete new floor and the roof, I assume is for seismic.
Well, this roof structure will have to be evaluated, and undoubtedly we'll be putting a diaphragm on this.
It kind of brings me to, that's just the old building, now we're doing the new structure. So I guess my question, I'm sort of the cost guy.
Mm-hmm. That's good to have a cost guy.
As always.
What do you have a projected cost estimate of the entire project?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I think it's important to ask that. from all the competitors. We kept in mind $6 million when we were designing this project. We can say that we're in the 7-figure range. We're not in the 8-figure range. Okay. We're collaborating with Park City architect Craig Elliott, and he is telling us also that things are being built from 200 to 350, and he's familiar with this design, a square foot. So if you run those numbers without kind of taking, removing, this is kind of a worst case, without removing some of those numbers for the back of house curatorial spaces, if you run those numbers, it's about, what, 8.75, so under $9 million. I think what might cost some money is the screen with the photovoltaics, but we also, so I think we feel more comfortable with that $6 million, maybe removing that screen, but we also think the screen is a great idea for a donor. That's something that a donor can appreciate, they can get involved in, and I think it would be sort of an easy sell for you. And then, of course, tax credits and grants with the sustainable, with the renewable energy.
And how many square feet did you end up with?
That's a really good question too, because we have a very efficient plan, and I think that's really important too, that we didn't add a lot of square footage. So we gave you a square footage analysis that is on this page here.
In the new material you gave?
In this handout right here. And that is, the program total is 25,455. Then we have almost 7,000 square feet of circulation. So the building total conditioned space is 32,300. 32,300. And with that, you're getting, 6,400 square foot of exhibition space. That's a lot, an event space. And your education is 5,800, so you've got almost 6,000 square feet for education, dedicated education space. So we are at 32.3, and then we have 11,740 of open space, outdoor space. So that, of course, is less expensive to build, but provides revenue streams.
Thank you. Robin?
Thanks, Melissa.
I love the idea that we can have 6 or 7 events going on at the same time. It's really been limiting. If we have an exhibit in this space that contractually says we can't have food or drink, we have to turn away rehearsal dinners and birthday parties and the like. And it's really limiting as a revenue generating source. One question I had, John, for you was when you talked about how you can have the abstract gallery space versus the wood, in the flexibility of the cornerstone of the proposal, is that a one-time decision?
Well, it can be, but we were thinking that it wasn't. It would be on an exhibit by exhibit basis.
And how do you do that?
Well, it would be part of the exhibit build out for that. If the curator wanted a more abstract space, it would be about building the space to be more abstract and not expose
With
the
walls,
wood.
you would
Movable
cover the walls, and we can also do a full blackout space up there as well. What we would do is put a wall where we have a low wall to go up to the skylight. We do a full height wall there for a blackout.
And then the walls are just in storage.
Or they could be, right, you could bring them in store. That would be an idea. We could detail something like that, or they would just be constructed.
Each time.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Lois?
I think you've created a beautifully nuanced approach to this for design solution, and thank you. It's a really intriguing approach that you've taken, and I love the connection with the environment that you have, not just in terms of how it sits on the landscape, but bringing in the aspen, bringing in the wood. I have a question about the amount of glass and the thermal envelope and how that will function from just a user perspective, and then also just given our climate with the snow and the stuff that comes out of the sky that gets spattered against the sides of the building. It's a concern that we would lose some of the beauty or it becomes a maintenance issue in terms of keeping that really clear so that we can continue to enjoy the, everything that you've created here.
I think in terms of the maintenance, this is, and I should have mentioned this, we're proposing a triple glazed system. So it's as efficient as a curtain wall system can be. But in terms of if you're concerned about the etched glass of the aspens, accumulated grime and dirt, that's actually on an inner face of that triple glazed system. So it's not.
Right, I've been thinking more of just the exterior of the glass itself. I know my windows look like at home after the storms. And, just think from a maintenance perspective, cleaning the things on the glass, is that something you thought about in terms of the program?
I think at home you notice those more too because you don't have a graphic pattern on them, on the windows. So I think you wouldn't notice it quite as much, but you would have, an annual cleaning of the glass that could take place after the winter, and that would be fine, but it wouldn't be, I don't think it's anything more than a typical maintenance that you would have. It wouldn't add a lot of costs.
Thank you.
I think one of the challenges built into the problem that everybody's facing, and the challenge to rebalance or repurpose the institution with more emphasis on event and exhibit, puts in potential kind of built-in programmatical conflicts. One of which, to increase on a very tight, constricted piece of property, to increase event space, you want to use the roof space. But we've got studio spaces that want to be flushing out the air with acidic fumes, fume hoods in the welding area, the soldering area coming out of the kiln, all of that obviously exhausted on the roofscape. Any idea how we reconcile that challenge?
We have actually had those discussions with our mechanical engineer because it's a big issue. We think that it can be handled with what we started with the base line, the ground floor with those mechanical rooms, and then we would work on venting it and screening that so that it's beautiful and integrated into the architecture. But it's definitely going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think that, in a very short period of time we had to do this. Those sorts of things are just, we're very confident, as Ann said, that they can be solved, that those issues can be solved, but it has to be solved in the next phase. And I can't point to the chases or to the building, but we think we're in the ballpark for things like that. It's definitely possible.
And our work would be to solve them in an artistic way.
You have what looks like a duplication. You have a catering kitchen and a cafe kitchen. Would you care to comment on why we need both of those?
That's on the ground floor plan. We also have a little catering room. Did you notice that on the upper floor? Just to make things, there's that, but I think he's talking about the ground floor. We have a commercial kitchen and then the cafe. And it's really, that is for the building use, and this would be more of a private use. This would be a rental space.